session. So please be patient, and then we're gonna start very soon. Okay, everyone, it's 9 a.m. here in Jakarta. So we would like to start our session. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome in Kemah Research Session and our beloved guest, our distinguished guest, Dr. Adamu Abbas. I would like to especially welcome you in our program in this session of Kemah Research. We call it Kemah Research, like a research camp held by Gugus Artikel dan Diseminasi, one unit that focus on research and publication in postgraduate program Universitas Negeri Jakarta. And today's session with Dr. Adamu Abbas, we would like to explore more about how to write a journal article. It is very crucial and important for postgraduate program as the requirement to graduate from our postgraduate program in Universitas Negeri Jakarta. And before we start, I would like to introduce our beloved speaker today, Dr. Adamu Abbas. So, Dr. Adamu Abbas now in Malaysia, so not really far from Indonesia, and finished having a academic background in mass communication by Bayero University and postgraduate diploma in mass communication in Bayero University also, and doing master in public relation Bayero University and PhD in communication University Utara Malaysia in 2018, and now he is a lecturer in Department of Marketing, Faculty of Business, Curtin University, Malaysia. Some of the unit that he taught is public relation research and evaluation, cross-cultural communication, techniques of public relation internship, and others. And he also actively doing research focusing on public relation, crisis communication, internal crisis communication, and storytelling. I think it is in our program in Kemah Research, we have really diverse background, academic background from our speaker. But in relation to the topic today, how to write a journal article, we would like to hearing and learn from you, Dr. Adamu Abbas. Dr. Adamu Abbas, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you very much, Eddie, for the introduction. In fact, I feel like recruiting you to be introducing me anywhere. So thank you very much.
You. You can call me Ami.
Ami, okay. All right. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And I would also want to start by thanking Dr. King for the invitation. And I'm really happy to present to the participants today. So let me share my slides. All right. So once again, good morning to everyone and welcome to this interesting session. My name is already by Utami is Adamu Abbas Adamu, and she has already provided a very good introduction about me. So today I will be discussing on how to write a journal, more of a sharing session where okay, sorry, can you hear me now? It's like yes. I was muted.
Yes, yeah. Yes, we are very sorry about that. You can
continue. Right. So as I mentioned, the title of my presentation today is going to be on how to write an article, journal article. It's more of a sharing session where I will share with you my experience writing journal articles, as well as my experience reviewing articles. And then I will also give some perspective from journals review guidelines. So these are some of the basic things that I'm going to discuss today. So the format of my presentation, I will start by providing a highlight of my research. Then I'll move into discussing about the sections of article, particularly research questions and expectations. Then I'll end the session by discussing on what are the expectations from journals. What do they really want from, that is, authors? So I will try to provide some tips, and then we round up the session with a Q&A session. So as mentioned by Utami, I am currently working with Cotton University, Malaysia. Although Cotton University has 4 campuses, our main campus is in Australia, while the subsequent campuses are one in Malaysia, which is the biggest campus. The campus is called Miri Campus in Sarawak. Then we have other campuses, one in Singapore, one in Dubai, and then in Mauritius. So these are the 4 offshore campuses of Cotton University. So currently in my faculty here in Malaysia, I am the research cluster leader of Sensible Marketing and Smart Societies. So this is a research cluster in our faculty that focus on research related to marketing and tourism, and as well as smart society, which is a very interesting area in tourism. And I have published severally in several journals. Particularly, I have 4 good publications in Web of Science. I have 4 Scopus and many more in peer reviews. I have also published in different publishers. That is, I have published in Emerald, I have published in Taylor and Francis, I have published in Sage, Springer, in the Science. So I have experience presenting in publishing my papers in different publishers, as well as I have also some editorial responsibilities. Currently, I am the chief editor-in-chief for the Journal of Digital Marketing Communication, which is a new journal. So we are now working on getting it to be a very competitive journal. And I am also the editorial board member for International Journal of Strategic Study, Communication. This particular journal is one of the most respected journal in communication. It is Q1 and it is highly respected. So I am one of the editorial board member, and I'm also an advisory member to a Journal of Digital Journal of Tourism and Hospitality. And I have worked closely with so many researchers, as well as I have participated in so many research, international research grants. For example, I have worked in 2 international research grants, which is one is basically from Indonesia and the other one is from Brunei. And we are still working on applying to other international grants. I have also secured part of a team of researchers that secured a national grant here in Malaysia, which is called FRGS. And I am also a team member of several internal grants. Yeah. So having highlighted some of my research, that is undertakings, here are some of the outputs that I basically just want to share them with you. I have published, if you look at this journal, this article, I published it in Emerald. So it's a very respected journal in communication. That is, it is a Q1 journal, a journal of communication. It is highly respected and a very top review process. So I have published one journal in this particular, one article in this particular journal, and the journal is also categorized as B under the ABDC, Australian ranking. And then I have also published in International Journal of Strategic Communication, which you can see it is also highly respected journal, and it's also ranked B. And I have also published, which is indexed by, that is Taylor and Francis. The publisher is Taylor and Francis. And then this one is Journal of Creative Communication, which is owned by Sage. So these are some few researches that I want to share with you. And of course, it's not easy to penetrate these journals, because sometimes in fact, most of this publication takes years, not only 1 year. I have this particular publication takes me 2 years plus to get it published. But however, it was really rewarding, and I didn't pay a single penny. I didn't pay any money, but the review process was very tough. It undergo several reviews before it was accepted. So it was a tough experience. It was really rigorous, but it was a rewarding experience to me. And as a result, they even sent me freely the hard copy of the journal when it was published. So the entire volume, a good copy of the volume was sent to me. So it's a very interesting experience, and it is good for researchers to try as much as possible to see that they publish in good journals. Yeah, so let's begin our session. So before you even start writing your article, you need to ask yourself these questions. They are very critical and they are very important, because answering this question will tell you whether you are prepared to write an article, to proceed with writing your article. The first thing is you need to ask yourself, have you done something new? Is your research new? What you have done, is it something that is interesting, something that nobody has done it? You need to ask yourself. If you know that what you have done, nobody has done that particular research, then you proceed to the next question. But if you are not sure that you have done something new, so you need to go back to your research work and check again to see what have you done new. So if you have done something new, then you can move to the second question. Is there any challenging thing in your work? Did you face any challenge in terms of maybe data collection, in terms of your analysis, in terms of even the interpretation of results and so on? There are so many challenges that you may face. Have you faced any challenge? Because research requires challenge. There is no way you will conduct a research in a very simple way. You start from point A and then you just reach point Z. easily. There must be challenges. So if you have faced a challenge, then you will know that definitely it's an indication that your research work is good. Then you can move again to ask yourself, will your results influence other researchers? Because this is very important. What have you contributed? Will your results show something new that researchers will be interested in? Influential researchers can be, for example, let's say there are so many studies that shows that employees prefer to work in their offices than working at home during COVID-19 pandemic. Work from home is not something that employees like. Most employees prefer to work in the office. And then your study now find out that no, employees prefer working from home than working from the office. So that is something, that may bring researchers to start thinking, oh, this is quite interesting, but you need to justify it. If you can be able to justify it with literature, so that is a very interesting contribution, and it is something that will influence and change the thinking of researchers. Another example can be, for example, studies have shown that your leadership and organizational leadership style, the style of a leader in an organization, can influence employees. That is employees' engagement, employees' performance. But your study shows that leadership style doesn't influence any employee engagement or employee performance. So that is also something that can change the thoughts of researchers, can influence them. So it's something good that you can use literature to support. You need to support it with literature, with theories to show that, yes, this is something that is really can be achieved or is something that is possible. Then that is a very good indication that your research is very important. So you proceed to the, finally, you look at it. Have you provided a solution to a difficult problem? Because research is about providing solution. So what solution have you provided to the industry, to theory, to the society? So all this you have to look at it, the implications. So if you have solved a very difficult problem, so that is, of course, a very good indication that you have done a good job, you have conducted a good research. So having highlighted this question, it is also very important to even now ask, to share with you, why do we even write articles? Because it's very important for researchers, especially for postgraduate students. I believe this is very important for them to know, why do we even need, to write a particular research article? Well, the first thing is for you to disseminate your research information, as well as to establish a publication record. As a researcher, you need to tell the world, you need to tell the research community, this is what you have done and this is the result of your research. So that other researchers, those that have experience and those that will like to do research in that area can be able to learn from you. And everybody can be able to see the steps you follow clearly to bring in that new knowledge. So it is a way of disseminating your research information. And then you also establish that you have a publication, which is good for you as a researcher. It is also helpful in finding employment and as well as good research grants. Because nowadays, because of internet, because of globalization, employment is no longer a local activity. Most organizations now are open to global staffs, global employees, because they want to diversify. We are in a global village. So your publications will show that you are active in research as well as in teaching, because as a lecturer, you cannot demonstrate that you are really, doing your work without publication output, because that will show that you read, you see developments in your area of study, and so on. So it is very important for research, for lecturers, for academicians particularly, to conduct research. So it is an evidence that the employer is going to employ someone that is very active. So it is good for employment purpose as well as research grants. We have so many research grant funding bodies. For example, we have the Social Science Research Council, which mostly give out research grants to researchers globally. Even IMF and so on, they also give out research grants. So they will not fund you or your research idea if they know that you don't even have any publication or you don't have any research experience. So you need to have publications, you need to publish to demonstrate that you can do research so that you can apply for those grants and then you can raise your CV. And again, the online journals have also provided opportunity for our research work to be to spread across the globe, because now every journal publish their articles online. So with those publications, it makes it easy for people to know you, to know your country, to know your research efforts, and so many information about you. So that is why research is very important. I have several experiences with this research getting global opportunity. I have participated in an interview where the panel members, two of the panel members are professors that I have already been citing their work. And when we met in the interview, we have to just talk in a way that as if we know each other, because of this research opportunity that is making it be possible for me to know their research and for them to see my citations when I cite their work, and as well as they were able to cite my work. And these days, before you even, most universities now, before they employ an employee, particularly a lecturer, they will ask you to have two different interviews. The first one will be research presentation and then the formal HR interview. And the research presentation will be basically on your research. They will ask you to take one of your best studies and then conduct a presentation on how you were able to conduct the research. So that is why a research publication is very important for HDR. For HDR and as well as for working lecturers. It's very important. We have to continue working, we have to continue doing good researches and to also contribute to the community. So again, having discussed on the why it is important to write an article, there are so many opportunities that can help us or help you, all of us, that can help us in continue to improve on our research skills. And from my experience and during my entire academic journey, I believe attending seminars on research and academic writing are very helpful in getting you prepared, because you can't even feel that motivation to do more research without attending seminars, to hear from scholars, to hear from friends, to hear from experts how their journey was. Because there are so many storytelling when you attend workshops, seminars on research. You will hear different perspectives, different experiences. So it is a very good learning process that will prepare you and that will give you that motivation to continue to think about, yes, I really need to continue to put effort in publishing my research outputs. So they are very good avenue. And again, conferences are also good opportunities. I think researchers need to, academicians as well as HDR students need to know that attending conferences is a very good way to get connection and to get the kind of ideas, triggering idea sessions that will make you to see so many opportunities to conduct research and even to collaborate with colleagues. So attending conferences is also a very good learning opportunity, as well as writing papers and submitting to journals. All those are also learning curves for researchers. You will be able to get yourself, exposed to the research world, as well as, there are other opportunities like replying reviewers' comments. Mostly it's replying reviewers' comment is also another important avenue for you to learn how to, write an article. So these are some of the few tips that can help. So before you even begin writing, you need to be clear about what your research questions. This is part of your research. Once you have conduct your research, even before conducting your research, you need to be clear about your research questions. A good research paper must have specific research questions. It needs to address a particular problem that was identified. So you need to do a thorough research. For example, in my study, I focus on crisis communication. That is where I expertise, crisis communication. And particularly in crisis communication, I focus on internal crisis communication. Let me give you a brief highlight of my research so that it can fit in with this. Internal crisis communication, I arrived at conducting research on internal crisis communication by thoroughly reviewing literature. And after thoroughly reviewing literature, I identified that organizations during crisis period only focus on communicating to external stakeholders, that is the victims and as well as the public, about the crisis situation, but they hardly look at employees. Employees are mostly neglected. So that is where now I identified a research gap, that there is a need for research on internal crisis communication. So from there, now I focus my research on internal crisis communication. So all my research questions was to identify internal crisis communication. To what extent do organizations apply internal communication during crisis period? So a good research paper must address a specific research question. What is the problem? What is the research question that you want to address? So you focus on that. If you are writing a research paper, it should focus only on that research question. Anything that does not relate to that research question should not be included. And that is why when I'm writing my papers, particularly the paper on internal crisis communication, whatever I discuss, focus on internal crisis communication only. The external crisis communication, communicating with victims, communicating with the general public, I don't touch that at all because it does not relate to what I'm doing in my research. So it is good to focus on what your study is all about, specific research question. And if your research has many research questions, like in my case, I have many research questions. When I identified that internal crisis communication was not really studied in crisis communication literature, when I want to start the research, I identified again another problem, that there was not a measurement scale. No scale exists to measure internal crisis communication. So therefore, my research questions now expanded from, developing, I want to develop a model, but then I realized that there was no scale. So I have multiple research questions. So if you have multiple research questions, it is good for you to publish multiple papers instead of publishing everything in one paper. So we decided to now publish the scale development only in one paper to show researchers that, okay, this is the process that we follow to develop the scale for this particular research. And then we now publish a separate paper that shows how we construct, how we develop the model for internal crisis communication for organizations. So multiple research questions require you to split the papers. You should not publish everything in one paper, so that at least even the flow of your research and your story about your research will be beneficial to many researchers in many ways. Yeah. So a good research question has to be specific. As I mentioned earlier, it has to be clear. Focus on what you are investigating. Don't move into other aspects that are not related to your study. It has to be original and novel, something new. My own example is we focus on internal crisis communication, which is understudied. So it is something that is entirely researched throughout the literature. The few studies that were published were not related to scale development, and there was no model at the particular time we conducted the study. So it is something entirely new. So you have to demonstrate to the researchers that what you are doing is original and it is novel. There is novelty. It's something new. And it has to be, of course, relevant to the scientific community. So that means you cannot begin, particularly for the early career researchers, you cannot begin a research by your own self. Maybe you just come in with your research questions. Maybe you have something that is happening in your street or in your community, and then you just decide to say, okay, I want to study this phenomena. Maybe children always cry, in the afternoon in your street, and then you just decide to say, oh, I want to study this. This is a research question. No, that is not a research question. A research, something that will be relevant to the broader scientific community, has to come from the literature. You have to go back to the literature, read what has been said about that phenomena, then before you move on to conduct your research. So research questions have to be of interest in the area of study. And sometimes, when we say that the research question should be of interest to others that are working in that area, for academic, that is basic research, is very easy. You can be able to, your research can be able to be of interest to researchers in that particular field. But if you are doing an applied research, maybe a research for organizations, maybe an organization is having lack of customers, and then you want to conduct a research on customer satisfaction in that organization. So the result will only be relevant to that organization. It may not be of interest to other organizations and even other researchers. So that means academic research such as address problem across board. So once you have a clear research question, that is, you have already identified your research gap, you have a clear research question. So that is where you now move into writing your paper. So writing your paper, your paper has to talk about what the question that you have identified and then how you answer that particular question. So it's kind of a flow, a storytelling. Just take writing a paper as something like storytelling. You start from the beginning. What was the problem that triggered you to now move into trying to find solution to that problem? So you start the storytelling. And the success of any scientific paper is based on the structure, how you start telling the story from the beginning until the final end, that you will tell that, okay, this is how you solve the problem. And basically, the structure have introduction, literature review, and so on. So you need to know that each section have a specific objective to address. There must be an objective that particular section is addressing. That is how the entire part of a journal article is. Every section addresses a specific objective. So let's take, for example, title. Your article title is the first indicator that will even attract the reviewer. Because I am also, I have reviewed several articles. Sometimes if the title itself is not good, I feel like, this paper may be difficult for me to review. Editors as well, they look at the title. Title entices editors toward even accepting accepting your paper for review. That is, when you send it, they will accept in order to send it for review. So you have to have a clear title. It has to be concise. It has to be catchy, that will attract readers. People will even be interested in reading your paper when it has a clear title. So you need to have a clear, concise, and accurate title, and it has to capture the keywords of your research. Like in my own case, I told you that I focus more on internal crisis communication. So my papers mostly have internal crisis communication. Then I follow with other discussion of the article. For example, one of my articles, I said developing developing a model for strategic internal crisis communication. So you can see internal crisis communication is always on the title. You have to ensure that the keyword, the specific area of study, has to be on the title. So your title has to be very informative and has to attract the reader. Yeah. All right. So then there is keywords. Every journal paper must have, or papers that are quality journals that are in Q1, Q2 have keywords. So your paper need to have a very good keywords. That is, the keywords should be based on the most important aspect of your study. That is, concepts that you have investigated should be on your keyword, should be part of your keywords. You need to know what are the concepts that you have investigated. For example, those that are doing quantitative, mostly they have constructs. So your constructs should be part of your keyword, because mostly when people are searching for articles, they use keywords. And if you are using the correct keywords in your area of study, it is very easy for researchers to get your article, and it will make it easier to get more citations. So keywords is very important in journal articles. So you need to ensure that your keywords are clear and are capturing the major aspect of your article. So the next part is abstract. When we talk about abstract, when you write an abstract, you are talking to three people. That is based on my experience. When I'm writing an abstract, I think about three people. I think about the author, I think about the readers, I think about the editor, and I think about the reviewers, because every one of them first read that abstract before they go into your article. So if that abstract does not show anything interesting, that is all. They will not go further to waste their time to read that particular article. So the most critical one is your editor. If the editor is happy with the abstract is clear, then your paper can go to review. And then the reviewers also, if your abstract is very clear, they will find it comfortable to continue reading your article. So your abstract have to be clear, concise, and easy, and highlight the most important aspect of your research. Particularly, an abstract should highlight what your research is all about. Your research should be, maybe, for example, in my own case, the purpose of my study is to examine how organizations communicate during crisis with their employees. And the main objective is to develop a skill and a model. So you have to briefly state your research, what your research is about. And then you have to talk about the method. This is very important. You have to talk about what method have you used to address the problem, number of respondents, and then you talk about your finding, what your study have found. So this is very important. If you are able to discuss these three, then of course it will give a clear view about what the whole article will be. Mostly researchers target 300 words. Most journals 200 to 300. It depends on the journal for abstract. So abstract is very important. This is where the reviewer, as well as the author, the editor will be happy, or will be even willing to send your journal for review. Like recently, I reviewed an article. They sent their abstract. They sent the whole article to me. When I read the abstract, they talk about theories that were used in the study. But when I read the full paper, there was no anything about theory. The two theories that were mentioned by the authors were not mentioned at all throughout the paper. So it was very disheartening to me. I feel really not happy that I have already conceived the idea of the paper and then the paper was disappointed. So you need to be sure that whatever you are talking about in that particular abstract is reflected in the paper. Then the introduction. This is the critical part of your paper, because this introduction is where, the reviewer may decide. Mostly in the introduction section, that is where the reviewers will conclude their decision. It happens a lot, though it depends on the nature of reviewers, but most reviewers, you convince them about your writing in the introduction section. And that is where they will have their own thought about, should I accept this paper or should I reject it? If they are not happy with how you construct your argument about the paper, so at this point, they have already made their decision. They will continue to read your paper, and if with that kind of belief that the paper has no quality, unless if you are able to do a very good work in the remaining part, I don't think your paper will scale through if the introduction does not clearly specify or articulate your research problem. So that is why you need to contextualize your argument in the introduction section. You need to tell the reviewers and everyone, what problem are you addressing? What is your research all about? So that is where you talk about the research gap. What is your research gap? What has not been done? And what has been done? And then what do you want to do? So that is where you identify the key problem and as well as the objective of your study and research questions. So your research questions and objective need to be highlighted in your introduction section, because this is where the reviewers make decisions. So in simple terms, what the reviewer want to see in your introduction is trace of previous work. That is how previous studies have built on that particular problem. In my own case, internal crisis communication, previous studies have always been done on external crisis communication, organization communicating to their audience. You will find so many studies that have been conducted on organization communicating to the general public about a crisis situation. We have Boeing crisis, we have MH370 crisis, we have so many crises globally. You find out organization mostly focus on communicating to external stakeholders. The employees are mostly forgotten during crisis. So that is how I built from previous work. Previous work were basically looking at outside. All researchers were interested in understanding how the organization should communicate with external stakeholders. So you have to build with previous work and explain again how you will address the gap. So after you have said that, oh, there is no research on this, maybe on internal communication during crisis, how will you address it? So you have to tell the researchers, you have to explain it clearly that, okay, I'm addressing this research gap by using this theory or by developing this model. So you have to be clear, you have to justify it. So you also have to show the broader contribution, and all this is in your introduction section, because this is almost the heart. This is where you win the heart of the reviewer. This is where you win the heart of the editor. The editor will be happy to send it for review, and the reviewer will be happy to, even if there are some other issues, the reviewer will only tell you how to make corrections in the paper. So you have to win the heart of your reviewer and editor in this section. If you didn't do that, your paper can be desk rejected, or at the first round of the review, you get a knockout. So in this section, again, you need to show the contribution. What contribution did your paper, will your paper do to the, that is to the academic, that is both academic, that is academician, theoretically, empirically, as well as policy-wise. What is the contribution of your paper? How will organizations use your research if it is social science, you know, as their policy? And theoretically, what new theory will it contribute to the research world in that particular specific area? So you need to be clear about this contribution. Some papers, particularly low-ranking papers, will accept one contribution, either theoretical contribution, practical contribution, or policy contribution. But high-quality journals, Q1 journals, impact factor journals will talk about all the three. They want to see all the three contributions. So that is where you need to put a lot of effort to ensure it. So the literature review section. In this literature review section, some people think that literature review, when we talk about literature review, we are talking about just accounting for previous or past studies, you know, and that is why some people even criticize the title literature review. Some people will say it is better, it is called theoretical framework, because when you are talking about theoretical framework, you are talking about what literature or theory has talked about and what you want to add to the literature. That is, you identify the gaps. Okay, the theory has been used in this context, in another context, and then you provide where it has not been used. That is, you identify, you take the reader to different gaps that you have identified in the literature. So that is why sometimes it is called theoretical framework instead of literature review. So it's a very important section. And this section mostly gets a lot of hit by reviewers. You find out that the author will just write without paying more attention because they believe it's just the review of past studies. Even the paper that I reviewed recently, their theoretical framework was scattered. There was no clear theoretical framework. So it's a section that researchers sometimes don't pay attention to. So it is very important. And if there is any foundational study, make sure it is cited in that particular section. For example, you are conducting a study on culture. There should be expectation that there will be citation of some researchers like Hofstede, dimension of theory, cultural dimensional theory. So there are key literatures that are already published that the reviewer will be looking forward to see. So this is a very important section that you need to pay attention to, and you have to show clear link between different parts of your literatures in the concepts that you are reviewing. For quantitative studies, you review mostly variables. So you need to demonstrate how those link between the variables as well as the entire theory that you are using for your framework. So you have to ensure how you build from the previous literature. So that is very important in the literature review section. All right, so the next part is methodology. And this is a very important section because this is what will determine whether your paper will be accepted or rejected. This is where you will demonstrate your rigorosity to show that, yes, this is a research work. Because if your paper doesn't clearly spell out the research method, then definitely it is going to trash bin. Reviewers and even editors, they are always having so much to do. So they are just looking for a slight problem, slight mistake, and then they will hit you with a rejection. So therefore, methodology is a very crucial and important part. You need to spell out each and every stage, each and every step, because research is a process. You are not implementing a new process. You have to follow the laid down original process of conducting research, the systematic way of conducting research. So that is why your methodology have to follow the scientific process of conducting research. You have to demonstrate the scientific approach. So you start by mostly journal articles. Methodology section start by describing the context of your study. Where have you conducted your study? Is it in Jakarta? Is it in Malaysia? Maybe in Sarawak? Maybe is it in Nigeria, either in Kano, Lagos? So you have to talk about, the contexts where you have conducted the research, and even the organization. Is it in organizational setting, or are you targeting maybe the public? Maybe it's a community that you are targeting. So you need to spell out your research setting. Then research design, this is very important. You must clearly explain your research design. How did you conduct the research? What approach are you using? Are you using quanti, quali? Are you using survey, case study approach, content analysis? So you have to clearly spell out your research design, because this is to show that, yes, your research has followed the scientific process. And then describe your sampling strategy. For example, for qualitative studies, mostly non-probability sampling, you have to explain how did you go about with the non-probability sampling and so on, to pick your sample frame. Quantitative studies, probability sampling, you pick mostly randomly, depending on though there are other justification that you can use. So you have to describe your sampling strategy. Then describe data collection instrument and procedure. So this is where you now discuss on particularly quantitative studies. You have to talk about the measures, the measurement scale. Were they adopted? Were they adapted? Were they developed? So you have to clearly, where did you get them from? So you have to talk about that in this section, and how the procedure, that you will collect the data. And then some will request for analysis, that is, you discuss on the analysis, how will you analyze the data, using what technique and so on. So for qualitative studies in this section, let me not be biased. For qualitative study, you have to discuss on, your interview guide. You discuss about the structure of your interview. How do you plan to do it? The recordings and everything. So you need to be clear, describe the instrument of your data collection. Yeah, so results. This is a very important as part of your paper, results. So in the results section, you need to state the results. What are your results without any interpretation? You run your analysis. What do you find? So this is where you present it. Sometimes you can present it. That is why it is mostly advised that you use tables. If, for example, you are using software, you need to refer back to the journal or refer back to how to present reports. There are different ways of presenting reports. There are key tables that you need to report in your research, checking outliers and so on. All those tables that are important to demonstrate how you run your analysis have to be reported. So this is the section where you report it. This is the section where you report, for example, in your study, you have already hypothesized that there is a positive relationship between leadership style and employees' engagement. So this is where you report, is it positive or negative? So your results mostly accept or reject your hypothesis, your research questions. It can accept them in this section or it can reject them. So this is where you now, when you finish writing your, analyzing your result, in this section, it is mostly advised that after you have find the result as they are, go back and read your introduction, that is the problem sections part, and see what have you said, and then what is the result. So from there, you will have a very good understanding of your research, the entire research data and what you have done. You will have a critical or a very good understanding of your research. So the result section is a very important section, and you have to be ethical. You describe as, of course, you have to start by describing the participant, who are they, women, men, how many men, how many women, their education. It's very good to give those information, the biographical information, because even from there you can be able to get some insight about your research. So key findings, have to be presented. That is in terms of the literature, what you have talked about in your problem, in your research question. So this is where you now present, clearly, those questions, that is the findings, you present them. No interpretation in this stage, but you can use tables and then present the result, briefly present it as it is. So results basically speaks to theory and empirical questions, for qualitative papers, they mostly follow, for qualitative papers, mostly, the themes, thematic analysis, you report your themes after your thematic analysis, and the thematic analysis, process that you have followed. So the discussion part, so in this part, this is where you now discuss or interpret your results with reference to past studies. So you have to discuss it with reference to past studies. You have to talk about, you have to talk about the results, and then, followed with your interpretation. And you have to cite previous studies. What have previous studies said about that particular study? What have they said? Have they talked about the study? Maybe, for example, we are talking about leadership and employee engagement. Maybe have they said that leadership style impacts employee engagement positively? So you have to now start reporting. What did your findings say? So this is where you demonstrate a critical understanding, and even yourself as a researcher. This is where the reviewer, the editors, the readers will see how analytical you are, because you are going to now put everything into perspective. You are going to now reflect and show your constructive thinking. So you have to interpret the result in this section. You have to reflect on the broader story of the themes, that is all the stories, particularly your problem statement and so on, you talk about it. And in this section, it is expected you report the practical implications, the implications for governments, organizations, what benefit will they get from your study? For researchers, what have you added to the theory, to the literature? So you have to talk about the implication, even to practitioners. How will it change their work scope, how they conduct their work, how they carry out their tasks and so on, their job tasks and so on. So that is what the discussion section. And in some papers, they combine both discussion and conclusion together. So, but quality journals must have, that is when you have we are talking about the Q1 journals, quality high impact factor journals, they mostly have a conclusion section. So they don't match everything. And in the conclusion section, this is where you summarize your findings and you tell your readers, the reviewers, as well as the editor, why your study matter. Because it's not just about summarizing, but you talk about why is this study even important, So you will tell them that, okay, these are the findings, and then that is why you strongly, you need to position your study as very important. So you need to talk about this in the conclusion, but you are not concluding, you are not going to write back the introduction part. No, this is where you now tell why your study matters. And then you need to acknowledge limitations. What have past studies done? And then what have your study, as limitations in terms of, what your study was not able to do. Maybe you only focus on 3 organizations, 4 organizations, so you may request maybe other studies to focus on 5 or 10 organizations and so on. Maybe you use quantitative, you suggest for qualitative study. So it depends on the study. You have to think about what you have, what are your limitations, and then propose steps for future studies. So what are the future studies that you think future researchers should conduct? So referencing and citations, yeah, this is, I believe, very clear to everyone. You can't conduct research without having references and citations. So you have in-text citations, make sure they are in the references. Some reviewers jump into the references. They will even look at the references first to see whether you have cited, the gurus in that area, the top researchers in that area. So once they saw them missing, so they know that the article entirely may not even be something of interest. So references, list after you cite good literature, recent literature in your area, as well as foundation literatures, then you need to make sure everything is in the reference section, because reviewers don't like to go through and then to see citations and then they are not included in the reference. So having the basics, that is the last part of the paper of a journal article that is really required. So, but having this structure doesn't mean that, it's a good start, but it doesn't mean that you will automatically get acceptance when you send it to the journal. You need to also go back and now study the journals. What are the journals' instruction to authors in terms of, how you do your citations, in terms of how you report, even the structure of the paper. So you have to go and read their instruction, even the word count. Some may say 8,000 words, some may say 6,000. So you need to go back to the journal to see what is their requirement. And again, there is what is called, like good journal fit. You need to see the scope, read the scope of the journal to avoid text rejection, to ensure that that journal is within this, your article is within the scope. For example, if I'm doing my research in crisis communication, I know it is under public relations. So my target articles will be public relations journals like Public Relations Review, Corporate Communication, and International Journal of Strategic Communication. But if I send my journal to maybe Journal of Intercultural Communication, which the scope is on culture, I know definitely I'm getting a rejection, unless if my study has a high attention, high focus on culture. So journal fit is very important. So quickly, because I can see time is I have almost exceeded, nearly to exceed the time. So quickly, let me summarize the remaining aspect of the paper. It's not much. So what impact factor journals are looking for? Mostly they are looking for strong theoretical gap. They want to see how do you arrive at your, that is problem. What is the problem in literature, not practical problem. Maybe the problem that the employees don't come to work on time and so on, absenteeism, all those are practical, theoretically, what is the theory, what is missing in the theory, what is absent in the theory. So theoretical gap is the major thing that, impact factor journals, high quality journals are looking for. And then your practical gap as well, support with a practical gap, good formatting of manuscript. I have got rejection based on the formatting of my manuscript. The reviewer said that the paper was not really arranged. It is badly arranged. So many comments that make the editor afraid that this person is not really a researcher, or this person doesn't really do a good research, because it doesn't show a very good impression that you have done something strong. So it's good. Title should be clear. Cover letter, please write a very good cover letter. Cover letter should highlight what the paper is all about in terms of your contribution, your findings, that is particularly contribution, and tell the editor why the paper is basically important for that particular journal. So cover letter is very important. Please get your manuscript edited. That is, proofreading is very important. Sometimes we get rejection because of proofreading, simple proofreading. And sometimes you will have a very good article, very good research, but because of the language problem, sometimes it got rejected. But the contribution, you can be able to see it clearly. So it's not something bad if you pay huge amount of money for review, because when you get published, the reputation is in you. You will feel happy with what you have done. So it's very good to get a very good editing for journal proofreading. And effective results section, very clear, we have discussed about this. Keep citation, that is, sometimes it is advised, because high quality journals don't like self-citations. You have many works, please don't cite all your work in the paper. Pick those ones that are relevant to the article. In fact, maybe unless you know what you have discussed is based on that paper, then you should cite it. If not, just ignore citing your papers. Quality journals don't like self-citations, much self-citation. Yeah. And avoid citations of authors from the same region. You are in the same country, you just focus on work that has been done in that country. That means it's a regional work. So you need to cite globally. Focus on international, researches before you talk about maybe local research and so on. So why DEX rejection happen? Sometimes it happens because of mismatch. The journal is focusing on culture, your study is on communication or on leadership. So the journal will definitely reject your article. So make sure you read the scope, the aims and scope of that particular journal. Make sure your research is new, novelty and significance. You have to ensure that this is a new thing that you are doing. Yeah, again, lack of theoretical contribution can lead to rejection, because if you are not contributing to any theory, to the literature, of course, you will get a straight away hit on reject. So rejection comes from lack of theoretical contribution. Writing, again, the structure of your paper, all this plagiarism, copying others' work without paraphrasing it, all this will lead to the automatic rejection, and then not following the guidelines of the journal. So all these are factors that can lead to rejection of your work. So here are some tips. I think these tips are very important because they will help in, in the study. They will help a lot. So they will help you in preparing your study. Be prepared for rejection. It can happen. Don't say that my research is perfect, my contribution is the best. it will not be rejected. And then maybe when you get the rejection, you feel down, because I know how rejection, I have been rejected by journals on many occasions. So it's something that I have already experienced, and I know how bad it feels when your work, you have put so much effort, you have collected your data, you have spent so many days, so many months doing analysis, writing the paper, and then someone will tell you you have not done anything or no contribution. You feel like you don't even want to submit, or you don't want to do research anymore, or you don't want to do any publication. It's better you are not good for it. You just feel down. So preparing yourself is very good. When you prepare that, yes, it's possible to get, the paper to be accepted or rejected. So prepare for rejection, particularly rejection. It's good to just get ready. So it's good when you have that confidence in, yes, it can be rejected, but work hard to make sure your paper is good. So that is a process of becoming resilient to anything that happened to your paper. Because these journals are free, they don't charge anything. So therefore, they have to thoroughly scrutinize your paper to ensure that it is something new, something that will contribute to the body of knowledge. So that is why rejection is very easy for them, because they want to ensure that your contribution will be something that will influence researchers within that field, or even researchers globally. Avoid predator journals that will just say, oh, once you submit today, in the next 2-3 days, you will get acceptance. So those are not good journals. They are not journals that will help you in having a very good reputation. So it is very important for you to get journals that are highly reputable, journals that are recognized in your area, quality journals, Q1, Q2. Yeah, these are particular journals that you should aim for. And sometimes I mostly is an advice from so many researchers, so many workshops that I have attended. Good researchers mostly advise that if you want to submit your work, sometimes you should target a very high journal, or good journal in your area. You may know that probably even from the onset, you may know that, oh, probably they may reject my paper, because you know that the quality of publication is very high. But it's good to try it. You may get rejection, but one good thing is that the feedback from reviewers, if you follow it, it will help you so much in making the paper better. And in fact, you can even submit to a journal that is even higher than that. So many researchers have had this experience where the paper is rejected. I have also the same experience. My paper was rejected in a very good journal, and then the feedback were very constructive, but I decided to find a particular month. I spent almost a month working on the feedback slowly without any rush. I didn't rush. I worked throughout the comments. I follow all the comments. And when I submitted to the next journal, which they are almost of the same category, the next journal quickly said that, yeah, the article looks very good. They have assigned it to an international researcher in the area, so that I will get a very good feedback to enhance my paper, and then other reviewers. So the feedbacks again were very exciting. It's about how I can even make the paper better to fit the audience of the journal, to also make the research stronger, and so on. So the advantage of submitting, that is why you just get prepared. If you get rejected, it's okay. But the feedback are very good, and they are very useful. It will help you to strengthen your research. I don't think mostly reviewers give feedback just to tell you that, no, you should not go ahead with this research. They will always show you some areas that you can maybe look into, and then maybe reframe your paper. So if you follow that particular advice, you will see that your paper will have a new look, and then you will move in. And in fact, some journals may even recommend other closely related journals that may maybe accept your work, because journals also do recommendations in terms of telling you that, oh, this study would be better suited for another journal instead of sending it to the journal. So, it's good when you try different, high journals first. Try high journals, then I will not advise, maybe you are trying high journals, you go down low all the time. Maybe you get rejection from a high journal, you go to a lower one. No. If you get rejection, work on the corrections and then try a better one or a journal of the same level and see what will happen. Because there are so many journals, thousands of journals, high quality journals. And of course, if your work is good, they will send it for review. And if the reviewers are okay, you will get your publication. So you can try another one. So have a great patience. It requires you to, to exercise patience. It's not something that you rush. As I told you, it takes me almost 2 years plus few months for the paper to be published, though the paper was accepted 1 year plus, but before it reached publication stage, it takes another cycle. So it reached almost 2 years plus few months. So it is a process, it's a long journey, but you should not be, you should not say that, oh, I can't withstand waiting for all these years. Because when you get the publication, it will increase your profile, it will increase your visibility, your reputation as a researcher will increase, recognition, you will be recognized. So there are so many opportunities that the article is not money, you are not going to get money for it, but it will add so many things to you. So exercise some patience, and learning is also very important. And that is why in the beginning I talk about, attending conferences, webinars, workshops, sharing with friends, and even group gurus in the area. All those kind of encounters, all those touching points help you in learning more about how to write, more about experiences from different people, and it will shape your thinking and make you even better, and to understand that, yes, it's not only you, if we talk about maybe rejection and so on. So everybody is trying to just do their best. And another strategy can be, you can also write many papers. You should not just focus, maybe I have submitted one paper, and then you will say, I will sit down until this paper is published before I will start writing another one, or before I will start doing another research. So, you keep on doing research. You submit this paper, don't just wait for it. It will take 3 months, 4 months. It depends on the journals, but mostly 3 months is the duration for a review. So before then, continue working on other areas so that you can have multiple submissions, and multiple outcomes. Sometimes you may get rejections, maybe 2, 3 within a week. Maybe all the papers may be out at the same time, maybe 2 may be rejected, one may also be given maybe second minor or major correction. So sometimes it can be, as a researcher, you just have to take it as that is the research life. You may get 2 rejections the same day or the same week. You are managing one rejection, before you finish recovering, another one has come. So you feel like, oh, is it going to, you just feel like everything is just like, nothing is more interesting. So yeah, it's good to, all these are learning opportunities, and discuss with friends and colleagues and researchers. Conferences are important, workshops are important. And then learn new methods and analytical tools. They are very important. They help a lot, particularly in this particular digital age. There are so many new research approaches for analyzing social media, particularly those that are doing research in the area of digital communication. I think almost everybody now have to learn how to do research on digital communication. So there are new research approaches that are now being used to analyze discussion on Twitter, to analyze discussion on different social media platforms. So all these new methodologies are very important for researchers to learn them, so that you can be able to also continue to evolve, to grow your research skills. So, and then the more you learn all those particular tools, the more you make your papers to become, more competitive. Because when you submit a paper and probably that journal have published few of that methodology, they will be so excited to get your paper on board, maybe to send it for review. And collaboration is also another important thing that you need to explore. As a researcher, you need to explore the opportunity of collaboration. Collaborate with colleagues in your workplace, collaborate with, even for HDR students, collaborate with your colleagues that you are studying together. It's very good. It's a good thing if you can do that, because it also helps you to grow your research skills with your colleagues. And maybe by the time you finish your studies, you will still continue to be interested in collaborating and working together. So collaboration is important. You collaborate with colleagues, you collaborate with external, not only within your organization, external researchers, because it builds your profile. It shows how strong you are in research when you have so many different authors that you have worked with from different fields, or from different countries. So all these are very good, and they show, they increase your reputation and your visibility as a researcher. So, and it's a very good learning point. And never underestimate any idea or learning process, because so many people will comment on your work. Even the reviewers, they will comment, they will give you comment. Don't say that, oh, this reviewer, this is not what I'm saying. I recently, we conducted a study, and recently we got a particular feedback from a journal. And the reviewer was telling us, because our study is on high-risk industries, crisis communication in high-risk industries. But then the reviewer was telling us, why don't we add something related to agility, and green green manufacturing. So we think that our study is not entirely related to anything that related to agility, agile mind, and so on. But he was asking us that our contribution in the contributions and conclusion, we should talk about that, how our paper has contributed to that. But then when I discussed with other researchers that have higher skills, in publications, they told me that, yeah, of course, now we are in an era where whatever research you do, you have to show how it contributes either to climate, to reducing all these climate issues, or green technology, or green related environment. So all those areas, or agility, so all those areas are very important. That is where now globally, the global climate in terms of solving problem is looking forward to. So it's good, learning process. You may get comments. Sometimes you may get comments that are, sometimes you may look at them as they are even out of the reviewer maybe has given you comment out of the scope of your work. But try to sit down, reflect, and see how that idea can help you in improving your work. And maybe that little contribution may help you to change the narrative of your work. So again, choose the journal, your journals wisely. It's very important when you are doing your research, and after you finish your research and then you want to submit for publication, you have to choose the journals wisely, because there are different categories of different types of journals. Their categorization in terms of quality, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So you can see it's based on quality. When we talk about Q1, we are talking about high rank journals, high quality. So when you talk about Q4, yeah, it is still a good journal. Once a journal is in that category from Q1 to Q4, they are all good, but the quality is different. So you need to be strategic, when you want to submit your articles. If your paper is very good, don't go to lower journals. Try as much as possible to submit in highly reputable journals. And one other thing that I will also recommend is try as much as possible to always publish in journals within your area of specialty. For example, I am in PR, crisis communication, in PR. So I try as much as possible to ensure that most of my publications are within the PR journals, that is journals that are focusing on organizational studies, particularly public relations. So there are several journals. So I pick the most reputable ones and then target them whenever I want to publish. So choosing a journal, particularly the one that the authors, even the authors that you cited in your work can be able to tell you, what journal will be suitable for your study. So you can also look at all the citations, look at which journals do you frequently, or what journal do you frequently cite. So that journal may be the best journal for you to submit your work. And of course, once you submit it, if it is the right journal, you get your paper going in the process of review. So this is another tip. Yeah, so here are some checklists, that you may also want to go through. They are very good checklists, and they are from Elsevier. And that these are most of the things that reviewers look for when they are reviewing articles. So particularly, you can see in the introduction, talks about it has to be effective, clear, and well organized, So your introduction is very important, You have to clearly introduce your arguments in the introduction. So these are just a recap. To some extent, it captures what I have already presented. But you can see from this, the editor, mostly when an editor wants to give comment, or the comment that the editor mostly want to see from the reviewer is about novelty, and suitability of the article to the journal. So editors want to see that if the particular reviewer maybe decided to say the article is not suitable, even if the reviewer have given you so much feedback, so it will just be the editor cannot go ahead with your paper. Definitely, it's going to be a rejection, because of course reviewers are editors are very busy. They used to have thousands of or hundreds of articles all the time, so their publication space is even very small, not very much. It's very small, sometimes 4 or 5 articles per issue. So they want to just reject. So any comment, they are just looking for any comment that is raising concern about your article. And once that comment is there, they will just give you the go that your journal, your article should go. Yeah. So I think this is the last slide, my presentation. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. And yeah, you cover everything that we need to be to consider in writing a journal article. And then I personally reflect to my own journey, finishing my PhD. You are very right. And I love your tips there. Like being patient and learning from the process is very important, because it's really different from everyone's journey in publishing the article. It is different from each other. And then I also highlight about like the process that maybe some of the student or someone can publish the article in short time, like 2 to 3 months, but somehow we also take years to publish an article. I have that all some of the cases that also prove what you said. And then, okay, I think we're gonna open the question and answer session. And I have someone that already sent a chat directly to you, Mr. Zulham. but I will read his question for others who hasn't got the question. So from Mr. Julham, have 3 questions. Wow. And then the first one, can you share your experience of being able to penetrate a reputable international journal? What strategy did you use at that time? And then the second question, what do you think about paid journal regarding the similarity of article quality around the world? I think this is quite a big concern for us also that work in postgraduate program, because the common practices is we targeting the paid journal, but as you said, like the reputable journal around the world, usually it is free except the open access. So I think it's quite a good time to move from the paradigm to submit in the paid journals to the free one for the students. And then the third, what weaknesses do you generally encounter as a reviewer when reviewing prospective articles to be published? I think that's all from Mr. Zulham here. But for other participants who would like to ask question to Dr. Adamu, please, you can write it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand to wait your turn to ask the question directly to Dr. Adamu. I think Dr. Adamu, do you want to respond Mr. Zulham's question?
All right, thank you very much for the questions. These are very good questions, actually. Very good. And I think this is something that I may start by sharing my experience. I think I started, submitting my articles to reputable journals during my PhD. I think that if I can recollect, the first article I submit is based on, a qualitative study that I have done. I submitted to a very good journal in my area, and the comment that I received from the reviewer, and not even the reviewer, it is the editor. The editor just told me that, well, this paper looks good and relevant to this journal, but your contribution is beyond the paper. This paper, your research cannot do this contribution, is beyond it, and you only use 8 or 12 respondents for the interview that I have conducted. So he said, the contribution, this little amount of data cannot make this, that is interpretation of the results that I'm trying to say that this paper has contributed. And he said that the journal doesn't even accept articles, that is research that focus on few, just 8 to 12 interviews. It's too small for them to publish. The data is not something that can, be generalized globally. So it was a very good feedback to me, even though it is even from the editor, that is the beginning. Yeah, it has not been sent to review. So what I think, based on this question, how to, that is penetrate these reputable journals, is try to submit and learn from the feedback, because sometimes you may have, people will share their experiences with you. They will tell you their own journey, but if you don't have the experience, still you can't say anything. But when you send your work, the feedback that you will get and everything will be something that will increase your learning, your learning process. So, and it will now tell you what to do next. And first, when you get that feedback, I'm very sure when you are sending the next article, you will put more effort. So that is how it's kind of motivation. It makes you to now start thinking, okay, if I want to send again, I have to be ready, I have to be prepared. So I think that is for the first question. The second question, paid journals. Well, this is something debatable, because I don't want to say that paid journals are not reputable, because I know some paid journals though they are very expensive, but the review process is thorough. Sometimes they even use almost 4 reviewers. So in that case, you can see the article will still undergo a rigorous review process. The review process is rigorous. So I will say that in this case, if you want to publish in a paid journal, you need to check the quality of the journal. You need to check, all these databases. In terms of maybe you check Shimago, you check Web of Science, you check all those databases. They will help you in ascertaining whether that journal is recognized. It will help you in identifying whether it is reputable, it's a reputable journal, it's a respected journal. So once you have do your research on the journal and ensure that yes, it's a journal that is not Mickey Mouse, it is not a predator journal, then I think it's fine. That is my own opinion. You can still target paid journals, but you have to be careful because some of them will accept your work in 3 days, in 4 days, but there are some that your article have to undergo a thorough review. And of course, they do reject articles. So they are the good ones you put, but you have to be careful in that. Then the third question is perspective of reviewer. Well, as a reviewer, actually, I started as a reviewer. Mostly I was a bit flexible. When articles come, I do have some kind of, I don't used to be so critical on rejection. But over the years, and particularly when I started receiving reviewing for top journals, then actually I have to change my style. I now do review transparently because I also receive a transparent review. Most of my articles recently some few articles that were sent to top journals, I get a transparent review. Everything was balanced. There was nothing like, someone having a bad feeling toward your research. It has to be something that is balanced, unbiased. So I review basically nowadays based on, this content of the paper. Is the paper really contributing? If there is no contribution, definitely I will recommend it to the editor that this paper has to be rejected because there is no evidence of any novelty in the paper. But when the paper is good, I will recommend for maybe minor or major corrections, depending on how that paper is written. So I initially started as a reviewer with, some kind of, because I was new, some flexibility, but now, the more you grow in the system and you learn from submitting your papers to good journals, you will also realize that review process is not about, just having a kind of feelings toward the work. You have to, once you receive a review, you have to remove your feelings to one side and then focus on the paper, what this paper is saying. If it's justified, if it is a new knowledge and there is clarity, then the paper gets through. So I think that is a little bit about my perspective. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. Yes, it is really relevant what you said in our situation here back to our university and then what we face for the student who finishing the PhD journey or the master journey by publishing the articles. And then I'm wondering if it is possible for you to share with us about the list of, maybe you have list of journals that you usually where you publish to us, so it's kind of like maybe helpful to direct some of the students that maybe have the same background with you to looking at those journals.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'll share with you.
Thank you. And please, other participant who wants to ask, do we have any other question? Silakan Bapak Ibu yang mau bertanya, kalau mau bertanya di dalam bahasa Indonesia juga tidak apa-apa, nanti dibantu ditranslatekan. Oke, Ibu Kinkin, please.
Sorry, thank you, Mbak Ade. And I would like to give information to you, Mr. Adam PhD, that in Indonesian regulation, that the PhD student must be publish the article in a Scopus accreditation. So could you share to us how to the best practices to our student in to write to Mbak Ade give information before that because the Scopus in every month, right, give the information to the discontinue accreditation for the Scopus journal. So in Indonesia, if such as me had already published my article and then the next month it's discontinue in Scopus journal. So this is very not suitable for us. So could you give the best tips or practices for us how to give for the Safely journal, because in Indonesia the direction of Minister of Education for our student. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Adam.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Dr. Kinkin. Yeah, I think this is actually a major concern because most of the, and that is why, you know, it is good to target higher journals, because most of the low-ranking journals, some of them are new and some of them are yet to be established. So if you target a journal that is not reputable, journal that has no, maybe it is not even indexed, particularly it's not ranked in the Q ranking, that is from Q1 to Q4. So I think, you know, there is that possibility of that journal to be unlisted by Scopus, because Scopus continuously, you know, all the time they used to unlist so many journals from their index. So the best thing is there are reputable sites that help in determining the quality of journal. For example, Shimago. Shimago is a website that has been used, you know, and it is still used by so many research institutions as the website to check the quality of a journal. So if you can find the target, that is the journal that you want to submit, if you can find it, you know, in Shimago, then I believe that journal may have a little longer span, or it may have a longer lifespan. But if that journal is not listed, mostly those journals perish easily. So Shimago is one of the sites that I am familiar, and I know that most researchers nowadays use to refer to when they want to submit their journals or to check the quality of the journal. And another suggestion is on the quality. Just like Utami mentioned, you know, targeting on-page journals. So if you target such kind of journals, actually they are journals that have, you know, mostly they have longer span. They hardly get unlisted, or maybe the journal will just maybe be disbanded. Mostly they hardly disband such kind of journals. So it's another way to avoid publishing, and then the next day you hear that the journal is already blacklisted or it has already been listed by Scopus. So these are ways that you can avoid it, but it's something that is still, no one can predict, something that can happen to especially emerging journals. So no one can predict, but doing the proper research will help in avoiding that problem. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Kinkin, for the question, and Dr. Adamu for the answer. But I would like to add, because as part of the postgraduate program team, actually we are revisiting the policy following the national policy also, that yes, we have that concern to focus on Scopus index in common practices for the publication. But however, we see now the opportunity to consider like other like Web Science Index and other indexes also to be considered beside the Scopus. And also we are trying to do like listing the journals using, like you said, Simago as the guide to make the list, because I think usually the high ranking journal such as the Q1, Q2, and Q3, I think it's not really easily get discontinued by those indexes. So we are trying to do that to help the students. We have the formulation of the journal where we can publish the papers. So we will not randomly find those journals in the website. So I would like to ask for you to use Indonesian to clarify this for the student, okay? So Bapak dan Ibu, GAD sebenarnya sedang berproses akan mengeluarkan list jurnal-jurnal yang akan bisa membantu Bapak Ibu mencari targeted journal, tempat di mana bisa publish berdasarkan pada Simago yang mungkin ada di ranking Q1, Q2, dan Q3, supaya tadi mengurangi possibility untuk terjebak dalam jurnal-jurnal yang mengaku bereputasi dengan indeks Scopus tertentu. Dan Dikti sendiri sebenarnya sudah membuka kesempatan bahwa tertulis di kebijakan tidak hanya Scopus, tapi bisa dengan beberapa indeks lain, misalnya Thomson Reuters dan juga Web Science. Jadi semoga ini jadi target keluaran pertama yang bisa membantu Bapak Ibu nanti mencari tempat publish jurnal. Dan ya mungkin itu infonya sementara supaya tadi menjembatani pertanyaannya Bu Kinkin tentang bagaimana mencari jurnal-jurnal bereputasi tempat publish ini. Nanti sekarang listnya sudah ada, tapi akan di regrouping dulu untuk sesuai bidang studi ataupun prodi masing-masing, nanti akan di-sharekan melalui prodi masing-masing. Begitu Bapak Ibu infonya. Thank you, Dr. Adamu, for waiting, like translating to in Indonesian, so it's like more clear for the student. And we have another question from Pak Zulham, but before we go to Pak Zulham again, is there any question from others? Mungkin sebelum Pak Zulham memberi kesempatan yang lain dulu. Tapi mohon maaf Pak Zulham, tidak apa-apa. Mungkin yang lain ada yang mau bertanya? Silakan Bapak Ibu. Oke, kalau tidak ada, then there are no more question from others. We go to Pak Zulham. In the last 5 years, are the research trend outlined in various journal articles that you know of? By the way, what do you think about the quality of article written by postgraduate students in Asia, especially Indonesia and Malaysia, compared to Europe and America, for example?
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the question. Yeah, and I think this is going to be more of a reflective question. Maybe I reflect on my readings and experiences, because I also studied here. I studied in Malaysia, so I know what we passed through during research. So I have, again, I have attended several webinars And some of the research webinars that I recently attended was conducted by top ranking journals editors like Ramaya and so many other top editors around the world. Marco, there are so many of them. So based on what the editors said, research, particularly from the developing countries, as they put it, sometimes researchers are eager to publish, they are very eager to publish. That is, researchers don't take time to, particularly, upcoming researchers, as you mentioned, HDR students, we are eager, and I share with you my experience. I submit an article that the editor told me that is too, general, as in I can't do this contribution with just 8 interviews. So sometimes the eagerness is there. I just want to get published. So without taking time to do, maybe to complete a study, to complete the study, we just want to do some publication. So sometimes there is the eagerness. So I think the best thing is for HDR students to ensure that, don't rush. Maybe you are in the first part of your study. Try as much as possible to take time to complete your study, the entire research, before you start targeting reputable journals. But by the time you start publishing some aspect of your study in low-ranking journals that are not indexed by any recognized publisher, so you may end up, publishing the efforts, maybe a very good study, a very good research that may contribute to the literature and to the body of knowledge. So I think the best thing for HDR students is to try as much as possible to ensure that you can publish your conceptual thoughts, your conceptual works, maybe the beginning of your literature review. Before you go to data collection, you can publish that. But by the time you start collecting your data, maybe you are using mixed method, or maybe you do your pilot study, try as much as possible to ensure that you keep your data until you finish the entire study. So when you finish your entire study, because nowadays journals prepare researchers to publish a full framework. I know there was a time where researchers can split their framework. Maybe you can split your framework into 2, publish one part and another part. So now mostly journals recognize full framework. So it is good for the researchers, for the HDR student, to start by completing the research, the entire research, before going for publications. So I think that will be the best. But again, your conceptual, that is the literature review aspect, I will recommend that you try as much as possible. If you can attend conferences, present your initial research idea, you can get it published and so on. So the literature aspect is very good to present it in conferences and maybe get it published if you can. But the full research output should be published at the end of the study. So I think in that way, HDR student from Asia, can be able to compete with the Western researchers. And another thing is sometimes, the proofreading, because English, I think there are only 3 or 4 countries that are categorized as English-speaking countries, native speakers, that is Australia, US, England, Canada, and maybe one other country. So, of course, when we write article, the English will not be to their standard. So, getting a very good proofreading, sometimes it's very expensive. I know, like Elsevier, sometimes it costs almost $500 for proofreading and so on. So it's very expensive. But if we can get, HDR students can be able to get out, to get their studies, to professional proofreaders, it will increase the rate of publications, because the research idea, the research process is clear, is there, but sometimes it's only the language that may not allow the reviewers to get the real story of the research. So from there, they will have to just decide to reject the work. So getting a very good review, proofreading, is also another thing that will help in increasing the number of publications and competing with the other part, that is the Western world, because the research process is followed, but it's all about now telling the story to the reviewer. And reviewers are just particular about how they understand the research. Once they are not sometimes clear about it, they may end up just giving their own view, their own reflection. So I think these are few things that I can be able to add to this, but maybe we may have someone to add more on it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Adamu. Yes, I think that's answer the question from Pak Zulfan. Okay, how about other participants? Is there any more question? Okay, if there's no more question, then we're gonna end this session. Dr. Adamu, just would like to let you know, I sent my email to you. So some other participant also asked if it is possible to get your PowerPoint presentation. Please do let me know if you don't mind, and then we can also communicate further for maybe another collaboration or another session that you can join us here in a postgraduate program, Universitas Negeri Jakarta.
All right. Yeah, I'm happy to conduct this particular session, and I will share the slides with the participant. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Kinkin and Utami. Yeah, it is nice to be with you on this session. So thank you very much.
Yes, also special thanks to Ibu Kinkin to bring our special speaker today, Dr. Adamu Abbas, here with us. And from postgraduate program, is there Pak Karisda ada di sana atau Mbak Lia ini yang bergabung? Ada sertifikat yang mau diserahkan secara virtual? Oke, terima kasih. Dr. Adamu, this is maybe we can't give you anything now, but hopefully we can go back offline, and then one day we can have you here with us together in the face-to-face session. But now this is the certificate from postgraduate program Universitas Negeri Jakarta, and acknowledge your session today in our research camp, KERIS. So on behalf of our director, Professor Dedi Purwana Ambus, we would like to thank you again for your session, your time, your effort, your energy, motivation, tips, and everything you've given to us today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Pak Karisda.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
And this is the end of our session. So I would like to say also thank you to other participants for the joining us today. And we do hope that this session brings something for you and support your journey in finishing your master degree or doctoral degree. We would like to see you again in another session. I think we still have a couple more days to end this November session, and we will organize the December session soon and let you know about all the session in our WhatsApp group. Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Kinkin, Dr. Adamu Abbas, and other
Welcome, Mbak. Thank you,
All right.
Dr. Prof.
All right. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Can I
Bye.
take a picture together?
Okay, yeah, let's
Okay.
take a picture together.
Yes,
Actually,
thank you.
Okay, let's turn on all the camera and get ready to take the photo session.
Yes, thank you, Mbak.
Okay, I will start from the first slide. Big smile, say cheers. Okay, I'll go to the second slide and then let's say cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. That's
Thank
all
you.
for today. We'll communicate again soon, Dr. Adamu. Thank you again, and other participant. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum
Okay,
warahmatullahi
bye.
wabarakatuh.
Bye, everyone. You're welcome.
Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Thank you,
Adam.
Made,
Bye.
Mazda.
See you. Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
all participants.
Terima kasih, Mbak Ade. Sama-sama, Ibu. Terima kasih banyak, Bapak Ibu. Sampai ketemu di sesi-sesi yang lain.
Oke, thank you. Izin pamit.
Ya, sama-sama Bu Kinkin.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, Ibu Ratu.